Building off a retro feel, Axiom Verge places emphasis on gunplay and gadgetry as you explore an altogether foreign world. Its branching corridors and monstrous enemies are reminiscent of a cross between Metroid and Contra. But does this adventure do enough to avoid being merely another clone? The story of Axiom Verge is a strange one. Following an accident in his lab, a scientist going by the name of Trace suddenly awakens in an alien world, guided by towering robotic faces. It can be a little hard to follow at times, with its mysteries delving into some rather far-out concepts. However, the plot never pushes itself too far into the spotlight, and doesn't take anything away from the experience. Immediately, it's easy to see the Metroid influence in Axiom Verge, and at times it may be perhaps a little too similar. Avid fans will recognize similarities in its environmental tiling, and despite a different look, enemies often share similar behaviors and attack patterns. Where the game diverges is in the focus on weaponry, with a wide variety of gun types, each exhibiting distinct shot patterns favoring different situations. Guns are often hidden away as satisfying rewards for exploring tricky areas. And even though we completed the game with 90% of the map uncovered, it's clear that there are still several guns we've yet to find. Weapons can be collectively enhanced by finding additional upgrades to improve their power, range, and projectile size. Plus, you can hold the shoulder button to lock yourself in place and aim, which is a surprisingly useful feature to dial in diagonal shots and attack without crossing into an enemy's line of fire. Trace also gains a number of cool abilities. Some, like the high jump, are fairly standard, but there's also a drill that lets you carve passages out of soft rock, and a bug-like drone that you can control directly to venture into tight spaces. The most unique piece of gear is the address disruptor, which essentially allows you to glitch certain objects into alternate forms. When glitched, an enemy might change its shot pattern, slow down, or blast through walls without damaging you. Floating spores become platforms, and insect hives spawn health instead of stinging wasps. Much of what you encounter can be altered in this way, and experimenting with the address disruptor consistently yields surprising discoveries. While we won't spoil everything in Trace's toolkit, it's somewhat disappointing that later items simply enhance existing abilities rather than introducing all new concepts. Of course, many of these upgrades are key to progressing through the branching passages of this connected world. Paths to new items and locations are hidden throughout, including areas entirely outside the map. While the strange talking machines you encounter give you general goals, you're left entirely without guidance as to where that objective may be. This serves as somewhat of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it amplifies the sense of feeling lost, and since any avenue may be the right way to go, you're free to explore every dead-end vein on the map without feeling nagged to move on. But at the same time, you can end up backtracking more than you'd like, simply in search of a new way forward. Since you never gain a huge amount of health, combat can present a fair challenge, and you'll go up against some enormous creatures. Some bosses test your ability to dance around bullets, and learning their patterns feels fulfilling. However, later foes trade the nuance for a more brute force approach, bombarding you with attacks and pushing you to mash flurries of your own in response. From both audio and visual perspectives, Axiom Verge takes on an enhanced retro approach. Shockwaves warp the pixelated environments, and the electronic audio packs a strong bassy punch. Changes in location shift from creepy, desolate interiors with bodies piled high to the stuff of science fantasy when you venture into open spaces with curious flora and fauna. While the music is enjoyable throughout, sound effects are often loud and sharp, becoming a bit grating at times. Our first run through Axiom Verge took about 14 hours, although we expect average playthroughs could come in several hours under that mark. In fact, the game features a dedicated mode for speedrunning, turning off cinemas and dialogue to focus on pure record-breaking gameplay. Axiom Verge isn't the best in its class, but it takes a familiar structure and adds a tool belt loaded with interesting weapons and gadgets. It's a worthwhile adventure that entices you to unearth its secrets and rewards you for doing so.